Hello, everyone. Welcome to Common Ground Storytelling. My name is Cheryl Peralt, and I am the host of this program, which began in February. We canceled our program last month due to the tragic loss of one of our own young students in town. And I would just like to take a few minutes to make mention of this. And this program evolved as an extension of my being a member on the Hopkinton Freedom Team, which intention is to promote love, inclusion, and trust within our town and community. And so there has been something written as a statement from the Freedom Team that is on our website, written by Christine Guthrie, which says, "This has been a deeply painful time for our Hopkinton community. We have lost Michaela Miller, a 16-year-old and cherished member of our community. The hearts of all who knew and loved her are broken as a result of losing her. Our hearts are with her mother, family, loved ones, and friends who have suffered the greatest loss." And I just wanted to make time for that. And indeed, our love and sympathy is with Michaela Miller's mother and family. And I thank you all for joining again at this time of rescheduling as we are resuming. And this program is about offering a lineup of 10 true pre-recorded stories that people make from different places in Hopkinton and beyond in other communities near and far. And we address a particular theme each month. And the idea is that this program is not so much about performance. There does not need to be rehearsal with these stories, but instead to share the experiencing of the art of listening to one another and telling our true stories and learning from our differences and our similarities, and sharing stories that are intended to bring people together in community. And to discover how, when we share our stories, we can provide an experience of closer connection, understanding, and caring for one another. This week, the focus is on the theme of laughter is good medicine. When I collected the stories for this program, I realized that I received a few jokes in the stories, but it wasn't all jokes on the topic of humor. A number of the stories were about really hard moments in people's lives and how laughter has helped. It made me think back to the singer-songwriter that I have known since about 20 years, and first getting involved in writing and coming out of learning about stand-up comedy and going into stories and poetry with Don White. And actually Don White, author and folk singer-songwriter who is comedic, came to Hopkinton for a parent education program, which I was coordinating to bring teachers and parents together at that time. And what I admired about Don is that he was able to get the audience laughing and feeling good and connected with one another, and then sing a song about an honest, real moment of life and weave that in and address how hard it is to be human and the challenges we go through as well as the joys. And I loved how he got the audience to listen to him and feel and experience life with him, even if their lives were different from his. And I usually read a poem to start us off, but tonight I wanted to start with a brief 3-minute reading from his book, which has little stories in it that reflect on hard moments of life with a perspective of compassion and sense of humor. So this short story, which has humor in it, but is also about life, his life, is called Memoirs of a Sea Student by Don White. And then we will go into our lineup. So Don starts with Father's Day and says, I called my dad and told him that I'd like to take him out for lunch. He didn't want to do it. A month before, I had stormed into his kitchen while he was having breakfast. I then spent 10 minutes screaming at him. I had condensed 35 years of unspoken feelings on the subject of everything that sucked about him as a father into those tumultuous minutes. My verbal volcanic eruption froze him at the table. He sat there holding a fork with a piece of egg on it and stared at me. It was not an experience he was anxious to repeat again anytime soon. I sensed his understandable lack of enthusiasm and assured him that I was quite satisfied with the emotional cleansing I had induced for myself during his breakfast. I therefore felt no need to subject him to any further litanies of his paternal shortcomings as I perceived them. Reluctantly, he agreed to come, and I picked him up and brought him to a local restaurant bar called the Shama. And as we were being seated, I remembered a story that my mother told me about my dad when he was a kid. His father was the type of alcoholic that would get paid on Friday and spend his whole paycheck at the bar that night. When my dad was a young man, he used to go to the bar and try to get his old man to go home before he spent all the money. I had often pictured him riding his bike home after having failed to instill through his pleading any consideration for the family into his father's consciousness. I could see him pedaling hard on his bike and promising himself that he would not forget how he felt and that his kids would never have to feel this way. The bar where my grandfather drank on Fridays after work was the Shaman. The place was full of ghosts from 1938. And as we looked over the luncheon menu, they hovered around us, curious to see what had become of the kid with the bicycle. I wanted them to know, so during our lunch, I proceeded to tell my dad, loud enough for his hovering ghost to hear, everything that I admired about the way he chose to live his life. I said, your father drank all the money and left you guys with nothing, but you always made sure that we had plenty of food and a nice place to live. At 13 years old, you had to become the breadwinner in your family. Thanks for giving me the teenage years that you never had. Even though you had to assume the role of provider at the price of your own childhood, you never held it against your father. There's a deep sense of forgiveness at the core of you, and that is impressive to me. Thanks for that, Dad. I'm sorry for saying all those things to you last month. That wasn't really about you. It was about me. I just needed to say them one more time to make sure they didn't lie around and fester inside of me. The truth is that you and Ma both handed me a life that was so much better than the lives you were handed. You're a great guy. I love you a lot, and all the ghosts in this place can go to hell. He looked at me kind of confused and said, what was the last thing you said? And I said, oh, just forget that part. I love you. Happy Father's Day. And that is Don White, Memoirs of a C Student. And there's a lot of real life memoirs and stories in Don's book. And he has stories about his own children too. And so I thank Don for his stories as part of our program today. And I thank all of the people here who said yes to being on the lineup. And these are friends I know from programs and community art connections who work in Hopkinton or are connected beyond. As far as Miami, we have a story tonight. And I invited people this time who I thought of who are funny, who say funny things, who use humor in their work maybe. Maybe I just like laughing with them. And so I look forward to sharing their stories with you, which will be pre-recorded with a time frame of 3 to 5 minutes each. And I get the pleasure of introducing them live in our gallery hosted by HCAM TV first to hear a little bit more about them before you see their stories. And the guidelines are pretty simple. This is intended to be an event that brings people together through the sharing of stories, not divide. And there is the request of no harm to anyone. And there is the expectation, just like when I was hosting storytelling at a cafe or an art center or somewhere, that when we're together listening to stories, we invite judgment to go out the door for ourselves as well as one another as we open ourselves up to listening and being in each other's shoes for a little bit. So again, I thank everybody who is here tonight, and I am going to get started with the introductions and the sharing of these stories. And first we have Zarina Fry that I would like to introduce you to. Zarina is not able to be with us tonight. She lives in Miami, and I had seen that she had recently been published in the book Chicken Soup for the Soul. I'm Speaking Now, Black Women Share Their Truth in 101 Stories of Love, Courage, and Hope. And when I heard from her by email, I thought she would be wonderful to be a part of this lineup tonight. And I have known Zarina when she was living locally and hosting an open mic in Westboro at the bookstore there, and a friend in the poetry world as well. So I'm grateful for Zarina. And what I'll say, since she's not here to help with introduction, is to let you know she gets us started off with a surprise from childhood as she looks back on through her story and now can laugh at. And with that, I'll say, hold on to your hat as you watch Zarina's story.
Hi, my name is Zarina Fry, and I am going to introduce my story called Thanksgiving Coon. It's about it's about Thanksgiving dinner, and I hope you enjoy it. Oh, I guess I should tell you a little bit about me. I am a writer, publisher, and a spoken word artist. I have been recently published in the book Chicken Soup for the Soul. My poem called Breakfast in Northport is actually one of the first poems that sets off a series of 101 stories by Black women. It is going to be available in stores in Target, Walmart, Amazon on June 1st. So hope you enjoy my story and go out there and get that book. You can actually come and you can actually get it from me too at zarinafry.com. So enjoy the story.
Hello, my name is Zarina X.E. Fry, contributing author of the forthcoming Chicken Soup for the Soul. I'm Speaking Now. So the story that I want to share with you today is a holiday story, a story around Thanksgiving. It seems like that is the holiday where you start getting all the warm and fuzzies, right? Where, everything just starts, the world just feels a little better, right? And I think a lot of it has to do with food. All of the great food that your mom cooked when you were a kid. It just seemed like it was just a magical time of the year. School was out, people are on vacation, you get to sleep in, just no worries. And you knew gifts were coming and relatives were coming from out of town who you haven't seen in a while, cousins, just a great time of the year, right? And so, you've got the food coming from the kitchen that just incense all of that, right? You got the sage dressing, the sausage stuffing, you've got the green bean casserole, you've got the greens, the yams, the potato salad, all types of pies and cakes. And you have all of your aunt's signature casseroles that they bring to the table out to this great buffet that is Thanksgiving. So the Thanksgiving that I remember is the one I had to have been about 7. I'm not sure exactly what age I was, but I wasn't tall enough to see over the kitchen sink. I had to peek in, just to look into the sink. Oh, mac and cheese. How could I forget mac and cheese? So just all of that good stuff. So I'm upstairs and I remember, I don't know, I was probably playing with dolls or took a nap, but for some reason I felt that I need to go downstairs. My mother had been cooking all day and the day before. But for some reason, I wanted to go downstairs thinking maybe I could sneak a peek of, something, lick the batter to the cake, maybe get a little, taste of this or that, right? A little fork full of mac and cheese. So I go barreling down the steps and, I go into the kitchen and I see my mother over the sink and she's ripping the skin off of this raccoon and there's blood and fur and paws everywhere and I'm like, Mama, what are you doing to the dog and the cat? I mean, I don't remember what I really thought it was, but I did not think it was a raccoon, you see. And I'm like, what is this? There's blood everywhere. This is not the smells that were coming out of the kitchen and what my eyes were seeing did not match. My mom's like, it's a raccoon. And I'm like, what? Why are you doing this to the raccoon? And she's like, you're gonna eat it. This is what we're gonna have for Thanksgiving. And I'm like, no, we're not. I'm not gonna have it. And then she drops the bomb on me and she says, well, you've had it before. I'm like, when, where, who, how? There is no way that I would purposely eat a raccoon. Well, apparently she fixed it with before. I mean, I guess she God, she skinned this raccoon, the previous raccoons without me knowing. I guess I don't know. I'm still traumatized by this. I'm like, I'm not eating. I'm just gonna have the turkey. She's like, we're not having turkey. We're having this coon. So she serves this raccoon in this big black pot that's speckled with white dots. I think almost every mother has this pot with the lid on it. It's an oval, deep roasting pot. Well, in our household, there was a raccoon in it. So she had decapitated the head, but left the paws, you see. She left the paws. She served the raccoon back up. So now the raccoon is now laying in the black pot like this with no neck, swimming in a bed of what may have been the sweetest and buttery sweet potatoes. I did not eat one single bite that year.
Yes, well, thank you, Zarina. And that was quite a surprise, as it sounds like it was for her childhood. And as I mentioned, with stories, we all have different experiences. And this was Zarina's submission for laughter as the best medicine for something back in her childhood. And I just happened to be in a bookstore the other day and finding a book on Euell Gibbons. And what do you know that there's mention of Raccoon in here from back in the 60s with his book on stalking the wild asparagus. And Euell mentions that raccoon, two excellent meat animals, are highly appreciated in some sections of the South, but seldom eaten anywhere elsewhere. Then, for meat purposes, he talks about how they are hunted in autumn, and he talks about a wild food dinner stuffing with wild plants and Jerusalem artichokes. So that was coincidental finding to Zarina's story. And so I thank Zarina for her story of thinking about what connects with her with laughter is good medicine. And I would like to move on to our next storyteller who is here in our gallery today. And that is Joan Alice Wood Kimball. So hello, Joan, if you can just mute. And while you are unmuting, Mike, I want to say that I have a notice here that says that the meeting is being recorded and to either continue or leave the meeting. And I'm not sure if that's okay. So that's just going to be right in front of me all the time. Okay.
Okay.
I just want to make sure it's supposed to be there. So Joan, hello.
Recording stopped.
Hello, hello. Hello
Thank
from
you.
Concord,
Hello from
Massachusetts.
Yes, thank you for being here. I'd like to tell the audience first a few things about you, Joan. Joan Kimball runs poetry workshops in both Wayland and Concord. Her poems have appeared in many places. She has 2 illustrated poetry chapbooks and her full collection, Early Light. Oh, there it is. And
There
it's a
it is.
beautiful book, yes. And for 6 years, she performed comic verse with a troupe called X.J. Kennedy and the Light Brigade. And her very own limerick, Cold October, is inscribed on granite in Edmonds Park in Newton.
And I have a
So-
picture of that too.
Oh, yes. Well, that's quite a way to be published with your poetry, Joan. And so I would just wanted to say you're a highly published poet and you are a serious poet and you have found ways to get your poetry heard and read and felt in serious ways, but also with your funny side. And so why, as a serious poet, do you think that humor is important? I know you had made some mention of Norman Cousins
Yeah.
and also wanted to talk a little about your involvement with humor and poetry.
Well, to start, I would say that when I'm writing, I want to write something that is going to catch the eye of the attention of the reader. And very often I feel that it has to be something surprising, if not funny. So I think about almost half of the poems in here are humorous in one way or another, of which 5 of them are limericks.
Hmm.
And my real fun is to write a limerick, which is just 5 lines. And there is a place on the internet where anybody can go and submit a limerick, and they won't turn you away. They will assign you an editor in order to make your limerick better. And this place is the Omnificent English Dictionary in limerick form, the OEDILF.com. I recommend it to everybody.
Thank you. That's a great resource to know, Joan. And what did you want to say about Norm Cousins before you begin in the next half minute?
Norman Cousins, it turns out, has this very same idea that you have, and that is that humor is medicine. And in fact, he wrote a book called The Anatomy of an Illness. Norman Cousins was what do you call it? A
Physician?
no, he was a writer.
Hmm.
And he got such a serious illness that he couldn't move. It was a collagen illness, and the doctor wanted to give him 36 pills a day, and he decided he couldn't do that. And he went to he got a hotel room, and he got lots of movies including, what were some of his movies? Let
Probably
me
funny
see.
movies, right, Joan?
Funny movies.
Yeah.
The Marx Brothers, for example, and Candid Camera. And he also read from a book of humor, which was called, let me see if I can find it.
Anatomy of an Illness, I believe, right?
This one is called,
Oh.
that was his own work,
Okay.
was Anatomy of an Illness. What he was using for humor was this E.B. White's Subtreasury of
Okay.
American humor.
Hmm.
So,
Well, that is very interesting. And thank you for sharing that, as well as talking about your work. And we're ready to roll your movie. Are you ready?
okay.
Okay. Thank you, Joan.
I love the idea that Cheryl has invited me, and I'm really thrilled to be here. I have, over the years, had many moments when I thought that I could manage to talk about something funny. And my particular interest has been doing it through poetry. I came to poetry at the age of 71 when I was at Wayland Poetry Workshop, and they showed me how to send things out to magazines. That was brand new for me. And I have had now about 85 or 90 poems accepted, and about 14 of them, 16 are limericks. And they're at the OEDILF, which is the Omnificent English Dictionary in Limerick form, which is on the internet. And I highly recommend going there, the OEDILF.com, which is also called the Omnificent English Dictionary in Limerick form. And they are trying to do one word. They want one limerick for every single word in the English language, which is amazing. They're a lot of fun. I also found that the friends of mine at the Concord Poetry Center wanted to write funny poems, and we ended up offering to do a reading of our funny poems at the Concord Poetry Center. This was back in 2007. And Barb Crane, Bob Clausen, Amy Woods, myself did this show, which we called On the Light Side. And then Barb figured out that X.J. Kennedy lived near her, and he is a famous poet, and he loves humor. So she went over to his house, asked him if he would join us, and he did. And now we called ourselves, from then on, from 2008 to 2014, we were X.J. Kennedy and the Light Brigade. And we went out, we also read at Hopkinton at the TV station with Cheryl. And that was in 2010. And we also read at 4 Massachusetts poetry festivals, many other places. We had a lovely time with it. And I do recommend, if you're at all interested in writing, to consider writing limericks, because they're so much fun. Also, I have a limerick which is on a stone in Edmonds Park, Newton. And the stone looks like this. And it's a limerick called Cold October. And it's about my looking at some bees one day in a very frosty morning that were lying on thistle heads, and they were holding so still. I thought they were dead, but then they went off. About 3 hours later, they were gone. And that poem goes like this. Cold October made 4 hairy bees soporifically lie at their ease, each apparently dead on a thistle stem head until warmed in the sun by degrees. And that's just one of those lightweight poems that I find a lot of fun to write. Then there's also a moment that happened when the Light Brigade and I were at a stage. We were on the umbrella stage, and Joe Kennedy was at the podium. The rest of us were sitting in seats, facing the audience. And suddenly my phone rang right in the middle of Joe's, when he was reading, and there went my phone. I couldn't figure out how to turn it off. So I had to jump up, run back behind the curtain and turn it off. That was so silly. But I have had a lot of fun going out and reading my poems in public. And Cheryl has certainly been one of the people who has helped me to do that. And I do thank her for it. It is still a moment that I cannot bring myself to. I do hope I will get to do some more reading. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joan, and always so much fun to see you with XJ Kennedy and the Light Brigade and bringing comedy to poetry or humor. And I know from both backgrounds, it's not easy to write funny stories in comedy. It's not easy. It's even more difficult, I think, to bring humor into poetry. And that is something you did, and did so impressively that you are etched in stone in Newton. So I encourage everyone to go and see. Thank you so much, Joan Kimball. Next, I would like to call Joseph Havel up to come and introduce his story. If you could just please unmute, Joe.
Yeah, I think I did it.
Oh, you did it. Terrific. Thank you.
Hi, Cheryl.
And hi. So when we're doing this interview, do you prefer Joe or Joseph?
Well, Linda uses Joseph, but Joe you can be informal.
All right, then it will be Joe for time being until Linda gets to say. And that Linda's your wife. And in introduction, I'll tell folks about you before we begin to talk a little bit. Linda is Joe's wife of 60 years now. And Joe is of Framingham, but born in Manhattan in 36 and grew up in Queens. And from an early age, Joe was interested in science and math, which led to a career in electrical engineering and work at Raytheon. And Joe and Linda, when they married, they moved to Long Island and then Boston, and they have 3 children and 5 grandchildren who are now all adults. And Joe says that he enjoys retirement since 1995 with family, guitar, travel, and I also noted that he does spend time with poets, storytellers, and songwriters, and is a bit of all of these himself.
Right.
So now I would like to invite you to just say a few words, if you like to say maybe about how you, a serious man of math and science and engineering, got involved in storytelling and perhaps humor, wherever you want to go with this. I think you had wanted to talk about storytelling a little bit.
Well, I forgot to put in my bio, I also was somewhat of a class clown in high school, 70 years.
Aha.
Right, at least I thought I was funny then. The teachers, they quite, once I called the teacher by her first name and she didn't like that. But on my yearbook, when I graduated, she said she's gonna miss me. So that was fine. But of course, I came through storytelling really because Linda went to Lesley College and she got involved with storytelling. And I think the first one I saw was Judith Black. And Linda was going to Brother Blues and I was working. And a couple of times I went there and said, this is a weird bunch of people. But it was in a coffee shop. And I said, don't forget the coffee, you know, buy the coffee. We had to grind it. But then I thought back too, is that when I was probably about 18, 19, I was out of high school. I would listen to Gene Shepard in New York. He was on WOR on Sunday nights. And I hope people know about him. He was on Channel 2 quite a bit. And then he died quite a few years ago. But he was at the Christmas Story. And a lot of his stories were about his old man in the Midwest and driving at night. So it was a perfect way to wind down on a Sunday. So actually, when I thought about it, he was probably the first storyteller I heard. And but it went on hold for many years until Linda went to college and stuff. And of course, then I started after work, I'd go to see Brother Blue, and Brother Blue is kind of addictive, you know, it's crazy. And then it's so fabulous. It's hard to, and of course, Ruth Hill, who tethered him, like I have to tether Linda a little, but so you get into that thing. And one day he confronted me at where I was eating. I had to, he said, well, Joe, when are you going to tell a story? I said, I'm an engineer. I don't tell stories. He said, well, you can tell a story how you met Linda. The light went on. And I did that. And Linda and I, 2007, we did a he said, she said version of this. A lot of my stories, because so many of my years have been married. You know, I was married at 25. I'm 85 now. So they're family. They're basically things that have happened that have, you know, come up to make a story. This story is pretty true. The only one thing I made, it's the only thing that isn't true. At the beginning, I said it was 2008. It was actually 2004. Some reason I missed that, but I didn't want to do the tape over again. So that's the only.
Well.
The rest of it.
All right.
The rest of the story is all pretty true. So
We'll forgive that, and let's take a look. Okay, Joe? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
It's almost the end of 2008, and we're sailing from St. Bart's to St. Martin to Phillipsburg. On our way home now. I'm enjoying the sail, but I'm reflecting on the last 10 days. This was a magical Christmas. It started early last summer when our son, Chris, and his wife took a year's leave of absence from their jobs, sold their Oakland home, purchased a 47-foot sailboat, and with their two sons, now 10 and 8, started this journey from New England. When Chris called early in December inviting us, I almost reverted to my old self. Well, maybe if I can get a cheap airfare. I know it's late. It's kind of, you know, near Christmas. I don't know. Thankfully, I didn't. I said yes. The trip was on. And by the way, I did get a cheap airfare. But what was the best part, the best memory? So many to choose from. It wasn't St. Martin. It was new, exciting, but it didn't compare to St. Bart. First, there was the perfect sail. Steady trade winds, swells. I love sailing. Linda, not so much, but she doesn't like sleeping on a boat, and we had that every night. We both loved that. We anchored in the harbor of Gustavia, about a half-mile out, with boats, some bigger, some smaller, and two that were huge, 400-foot mega yachts. Larry Ellison and Paul Allen were our neighbors. They're billionaires. We're having Christmas with the rich and famous. The beach scene, oh, I love that. Beaches, white sand, warm blue water, and women, young and old, in their bikinis. Some women found that one or even both parts of their bikini were not necessary. How could I not love that? Well, I don't know about Linda. I never talked to her about this. And then Christmas, so wonderful with our grandchildren and family. And the day after Christmas, it's our wedding anniversary, our 44th. This was going to be special. At sunset, we took the dinghy into Gustavia, went and ate at a wonderful waterfront restaurant, came back, took the dinghy, and under a bright full moon, found our way back to the sailboat. I felt so sophisticated. Well, now we're in Phillipsburg, back to reality. It was a sad hugs with our son and grandchildren, and then getting the cab. I thought we had enough time to get to the airport with no problem, but with the traffic, it was slow. And by the time we reached there, I was stressed out. The terminal, it's small. It was full of people, but I saw that our flight was a little delayed, so I started to feel better. The first line was huge. It was to pay the departure tax, but no credit card, only cash. So I ran out of the terminal, around the building, found the ATM machines, 3 languages, 3 currencies. I finally figured it out. And next, we were getting our boarding pass. That went pretty easy, and we were left with only one more hurdle. That was to get our bags checked by security. We get to the X-ray machine. My bag comes in, stops, goes out. Linda's bag comes in, stops. The man says, "Ma'am, go over to the table. We'll bring the bag there, and we'll have it inspected manually." Well, the inspector was this woman. She wasn't old, but she had a mature look and a presence that suggested authority. But she was very friendly and had this wonderful lilting West Indian accent. Now, I'm involved here, so I didn't say, "Linda, I told you when we packed, be careful. They think everything's a weapon. How could you have been so stupid?" These words never came to my lips. I let a few words in, but just to help facilitate the process. Well, the first pass, the woman doesn't find anything. Now, Linda's very helpful at supermarkets. She helps the people pack the bags, and this was no exception. So I felt the need to gently remind her, "Linda, let the woman do her job." The woman stops. She looks at me and she says in this wonderful West Indian accent, "Sir, this is a conversation between the ladies." Conversation between the ladies? What about me? I was disappearing. I was speechless. And I felt I was shrinking into the ground. And I looked up and I saw Linda's face. And I knew that for her, this was the very best part of our wonderful Christmas in the Caribbean. Thank you.
And thank you, Joe, for your story of humor from your adventure with Linda. And thank you, Linda, for your part too. And now we're going to travel on to our next story. And I would like to welcome Pooja Srivastava to come and join me. If you could just unmute, please.
Hello, everybody.
Pooja, hello, Pooja. Good to see
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for joining. And Pooja comes from Hopkinton, and I will tell you a little more about her. That as she tells me, she is the mother of 2 Incredibles, which reflects her love of being a mother and her family. She works as an application developer at CVS Health and aspires to be an enterprise architect. Pooja says that she loves to spend time with her loving husband and family, and in her spare time to read, write, sing, dance, paint, cook, and be spiritually connected with nature and the world. Now, Pooja, in thinking about introducing the story that you have to share and the importance of laughter. Your story is not about something funny, but something very serious and hard for you at the time in dealing with a sudden life-threatening illness or accident. Well, in this case, it was illness, more so reaction, one of the hardest moments in your life, probably. And in fact, when you were sharing the story, you got emotional, right? And so I wondered if you would want to say a few words about how it is to be a family member dealing with a sudden serious health issue of a child, or also that you make a lot of spiritual references in here without specific reference to religion, but that it seems spirituality as well as addressing humor is important for coping with this. And, I'm curious if you want to address that, maybe a little 2 minutes of whatever you'd like to say with those curiosities I have about your story.
Yes, Cheryl, and thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here with such wonderful writers and storytellers. And I chose this story because it's certainly very frightening, and I had lived with that fear since I have seen my son having all those allergies. And when people are scared, that's I think is the hardest time for them to be able to laugh and have some humor. That's the hardest moment. So that's why I wanted to share this story, that even in times like that, if you choose to introduce humor here and there, it not only helps the person who is going through that sickness, but also people around him. And life happens, sometimes a lot happens. And with spirituality, you get a chance to let it go, leave it on a supreme power and have faith. And also allow yourself to forgive people around you and forgive yourself, because when things like this happens, you have a lot of expectations. Not everybody be doing things that you might expect. They might not even know. Communication is so short in such situations. So spirituality helps to heal all that internally.
Yes, well, I think you weave both in really well into this story, which is very dramatic time in your life. So I thank you for being here, saying yes to sharing your story and being part of the lineup. And look forward to sharing the story that you contributed with our audience this evening. So thank you, Pooja.
Thank you, Cheryl. It was a cold winter day when my worst nightmare came true. I got a call from Hopkins School principal, and he told me that my son had a severe allergic reaction. It was just unbelievable. I couldn't understand it. That was not possible. I felt so upset, angry, sad, all at the same time. And I had to rush to school. I called my husband, and he was on his way as well. As soon as I reached the school, and I was chanting my mantras on which I have full faith to bring internal healing and recovery to my son. And I kept on praying, God, please keep him safe, help him recover as soon as possible. This shouldn't be happening to him. And when I reached school, everybody knew what was going on. They took me to the nurse's office where my son was sitting on a bench. He looked so weak. I didn't understand how can this reaction make him look like this, when in the morning I just saw him all giggling, laughing, doing all sorts of funny things like he always does. And it was unbelievable. His skin was covered in hives, and his face was a little swollen, his eyes so small, and his lips losing color. I don't know, dark or light, but they were not the original color. And I just prayed to God, please bring him out of the situation, and he doesn't have to be this way. He was already given EpiPen, and when he saw me on top of this, like all of this he was going through, he tried to be so brave, and he saw me, he knew what I was going through, and he is like, I'm okay, mom, I'm okay. And I couldn't believe, like, he was being so brave in that moment. When he got the EpiPen, all the adrenaline rush and all the how it must have made him feel, I just couldn't imagine how can he be so brave at this age. He was just like a fourth grader. I couldn't believe it. And I was being asked by the meds and principal, like, what would I like to do? Should we take him to the hospital, or do I want to go to the pediatrician? And I was in no situation to decide. I was feeling like weaker than my son. And I really didn't trust my brain at that point, but I was being asked to make that decision. And somehow in that moment, the urge that I was feeling was like to just take my son away from all this, take him home, and give him all the cozy comfort at home, not go to the hospital and all that mechanical environment, and what that will make him even feel worse. That was the voice coming out of my heart, but I knew I had to, think through this. And I asked him, should we go to the hospital? And he's like, I'm okay. And he didn't look okay, but I thought, okay, the pediatrician is only a few minutes away. We can take a second opinion and see if we need to go to the hospital. We'll go right away. And my husband was on his way. That will give us a little more time to go together to the hospital. And he already got his EpiPen. The worst decision I ever made in my life. We went to the pediatrician. I started driving. My son was in the back seat. I was almost to the parking lot when he said, my chest is hurting. And I'm like, we are here. I rushed to open the door. I supported him to come out of the car, and I see that he's just like falling to the ground and his lips turning even darker. He said, I cannot see. And in that moment, I was like, how can I even support his body weight? And my husband was right there. He reached there, he held him. And we had to call out the nurses and doctors outside in the parking lot. We called 911. We finally went to the hospital. All the way in the ambulance, I was praying to God, and help is what I really needed from God to bring him out of the situation. And in the hospital, a few hours were all the hustle bustle of, the doctors, nurses, equipments, and all that. Finally, and the concerns in their voice and what could happen worried us even more. I don't know what my son would be thinking of, because he could hear all that. But after all of that, in the evening when he started talking a little bit, my husband even jokingly asked him, what did those walnuts taste like? And he replied in a joking manner, he said, it didn't taste much like anything. I just swallowed a little bit, and then I started feeling something. He's like, Mama, when will you stop reciting these mantras? That was the medicine we all needed at that point. My husband believed like laughter is the best medicine, and for sure we realized that the best thing we saw that day was see him smile.
Thank you, Pooja, for being brave and telling that hard story from a time in motherhood. And I imagine that resonates for many other parents when there is a health issue, a sudden health issue with a child, and how helpless and frightening that can be. And to share that with us, to show the connection of how once your son was stable, and how your family was moving forward with using humor as well as supporting each other, and that your son was even from his bedside offering some humor back to you. And that does show a little bit of the laughter is medicine that Joan was talking about with Norman Cousins too, that it was perhaps healing for you all, and it brings memories for me as well. So I appreciate you sharing that hard story. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thanks, everybody.
And speaking of mothers and grandmothers, I would like to invite Helena Leet Pellegrini to come and join us now, where you are in the gallery. So we have the 9 contributors of stories here in our gallery this evening, all together, keeping company. And Helena, are you there?
I'm here.
And there you are. There you are in Shrewsbury. Good to see you. And I just want to tell folks a little bit about you before you begin and talk for a few minutes. Helena Leet Pellegrini is the mother of 3 and the grandmother of 5. And she grew up in Worcester, Massachusetts, and lives currently at Southgate in Shrewsbury with her dear husband of 63 years. And Helena has worked as a psychologist, still working as a psychologist. And is an award-winning storyteller. She's been a mentor for navigating the mysteries and complexities of life's journey. And she has recently done a mentoring interview on HCAM TV with me for talking about how in her work, she has seen storytelling and stories bring people together. So that will be posted soon on our playlist page. And she did a beautiful job. And I have taken mentoring classes with Helena as well. And I'm excited to know that Helena's been working on a book of her memoir of her life with the stories that she has told out in performance, and perhaps some she has not. And it's called Living, Laughing, and Loving Out Loud, stories from the heart that have been described as funny, poignant, captivating, and compelling. And also in her bio to mention that at 84, she's a survivor and thriver of 2 kinds of cancer and many other adventures that come along with simply being alive. Well said. And I'm wondering, for 2 minutes of talk, if you can tell a little of the importance of humor in your storytelling in daily life and what you're doing there at Southgate and what is coming through in your memoir, whatever you'd like to say from those 2 projects.
Very briefly, I'm in a retirement community now. When we first came, we'd get together for dinners, people would invite you. And then I just became so aware of the 70, 80, 90-year-olds who the accumulated wisdom and their adventures they had in life, and they'd say things like, well, I don't have stories, but of course you do. And we'd be having dinner, listening to a story, and I'd wonder what's happening at that table. So we created a storytelling circle, which is pretty much what you're doing, community telling, so that we all get to hear. And so you didn't have to wait till you were invited to a certain dinner table to hear a story. So that's been flourishing here. And I think we're going to during COVID, of course, that was suspended, but we're going to pick that up again. So that's exciting. And
that sounds terrific.
It's great. And just the other thing about the fact that I'm putting some of my stories in books, I never assumed that would happen because I've been storytelling about 15 years. And sometimes people would ask, do you have, can we get a copy of your story anywhere? And it's different if you're performing or if you're telling a story as opposed to writing it. But just recently, my daughter, who self-published her own memoir about her journey healing through chronic pain, said, Mom, let's do it, and it's part of, legacy and just wanting to pass on the family stories. And so it's been a joy working with my daughter because she's learned the mechanics of publishing, and so that's going to be out fairly soon, pretty soon.
That's terrific. That's wonderful to hear. And doing this all in the midst of the world pandemic, right? And making things happen, Helena. And laughter has always been very important. I mean, it's just there, just always so I guess that's a good enough introduction, maybe just. Yeah. Well, I think that's true of you and in knowing you. So let's take a look at the story and see that shine through.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Helena Leet Pellegrini, and
I've always loved to laugh. Jean Houston said, at the height of laughter, the universe is flung into a kaleidoscope of possibilities. I'd like to share a couple of encounters that I've had that helped me grow in my appreciation of the power and the wonder of laughter. I was having lunch with some female cousins at a nice restaurant at the corner of Beacon Hill and the State House. We were having such a great time. We figured we should do this more often. So we planned another cousins outing, but we said, let's this time include the guys. How about going for a boat ride in Boston Harbor for those 1 hour boat rides? Great idea. That's when it happened. We came up with a crazy and silly idea that tickled us that tickled us pink. And we figured we would surprise the guys by showing up for this 1 hour boat ride, menopausal women that we were, in wedding gowns and prom dresses. The idea was so ludicrous that we burst out in gales of laughter. We were sitting in the restaurant, nearly falling out of our chairs, howling with laughter. We saw people around us kind of looking at us with that look, which made us laugh only harder. Well, we were convulsing still. When we left the restaurant, we're standing outdoors at that corner, the Beacon Hill corner, and we are holding our sides, bending over. We're crossing our legs. But now when people pass us, they smile and there's a twinkling in their eyes. And in that moment, we're connecting with strangers. Victor Borge said the shortest distance between people is laughter. Then we look up and we notice out of the upstairs office windows in the State House, there are people leaning way out, laughing and waving at us. We wave back. Do you know them? Do you know them? Nobody knows who they are. They're total strangers, but right now they feel more like cousins. We're connecting with them at a pretty good distance. Who'd have thought? Later, I found a John Cleese quote, and he said about laughter, he said, it is impossible to maintain any kind of distance or any sense of social hierarchy when you're just howling with laughter. Laughter, he said, is a force for democracy. Another possibility for dealing with this divisiveness that's a part of our lives these days, who knows? Another encounter happened when my daughter and son-in-law, who were invited to an out-of-town wedding, asked me if I would travel with them so I could babysit for their 6-month-old daughter, my granddaughter, Michaela. Of course I went. We were in a Washington, D.C. hotel, and when it came time for them to attend the wedding, they brought Michaela into my room. She was at 6 months, starting to play with her voice. She was combining consonants and vowels and making those bag sounds. Oh, always so fantastic, wonderful to be with my granddaughter, Michaela. At some point, I had to go to the bathroom, so I put her in her infant seat and positioned it right in the center of a great king-size bed so she'd be safe. I went to the bathroom, came back, and then it happened. Michaela and I looked at each other. We fell into each other's eyes, and at the same moment, we erupted, both of us, in a no holds barred, total, full-bodied laugh that lasted and clearly came from someplace else. I mean, it was so joyful. It was past past language, past thinking. It was as if we had a door had been thrust open into infinity, and we were jettisoned into a vastness that included everything and everybody. There was a wholeness. There was a holiness. Anne Lamott said, laughter is carbonated holiness. That was it. My love affair with laughter continues, and actually, the older I get, the more intense that affair becomes. I love Maya Angelou's words. Laugh as much as you can. Always laugh. Laughter is the sweetest thing one can give for oneself and for one's fellow human beings. Thank you. Thank you, HCAM. Thank you, Cheryl, everybody.
Elena, thank you for sharing your love affair with laughter, carbonated holiness. Thank you so much. And now, there was some reference to quotes there, literary writers. And I would like, speaking of that, I would like to introduce our next participant, who is Diane Bilyak. Diane, if you are there, could you please? Oh, okay. I don't see you, but I trust that you're there and showing up because I hear your voice. So good to have you come and join, Diane. And I just want to let folks know a little bit about you. Diane comes from Connecticut, and she is a Pushcart Prize nominated writer and a graduate of the Sacred Institute of Music and Arts. And she is a Connecticut disability rights advocate. Her book of poems, Against the Turning, was published by Amherst Writers and Artists Press, and she's been featured in a number of journals. And in this year, 2021, by Wesleyan Press, published her memoir, Nothing Special, The Mostly True, Sometimes Funny Tales of Two Sisters, which won the Driftless Award for an outstanding book by a Connecticut writer. Well, that's a mouthful, and congratulations, Diane. I am not seeing you on the screen.
I'm here, I promise.
Oh, there you are. Yes, okay. So, Diane, thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for contributing a story about your sister and your relationship, right?
Yes.
And you have this book coming out.
I have it out. It's out. It's right here.
Oh, show us. Oh,
Yeah.
Congratulations.
That's what it looks like.
It involves you and your sister and your relationship, and it involves humor. What would you like us to know about your book as it's hot off the press, right?
Yes. Well, I guess there's several things. First of all, my sister has Down syndrome. And so I kind of explore my family's funny, and we tend to tease each other and kind of mock each other. And so just because she was born with Down syndrome did not free her from that kind of treatment. And so she's learned from us as well to be funny. And so the book is anecdotes and vignettes, and I worked on a lot of them. So they're sort of episodic chapters that go through our 50 years of our lives. So it's the longest coming of age memoir in history. So what was I going to say? But Cheryl, we were in that group. I'll give you something to laugh about, remember?
Yeah.
And so there were four of us, and Cheryl was great. Like, I got to do all these stories and practice them around the Boston area and different places with our friend Liz and Cheryl. Deborah. So that was so much a part of how this book happened, was because of our work together and the ability to just work with an audience and see what people liked and didn't like. And I also, but it's called Nothing Special because I don't have any, I'm not special. I'm a nobody writing a memoir. But when you have a sister with Down syndrome, she's considered special. And so it goes hand in hand with that. And so, yeah.
Well, looking forward to read your book and congratulations again.
Thank you.
And now I'm excited to take a look at your story. Book comes to stage of our Zoom anyway, right?
Yes, it's not, this one isn't in the book, so it'll be,
Oh, okay.
yeah. Be
Okay, we
interesting
get a
to hear.
bonus then. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you. When I heard the theme was laughter is the best medicine for this, I immediately thought of my sister Christine. In our family, whenever like there's tension or she can sense maybe somebody's a little sad, she'll either do this little side hug thing or she'll say something funny to lighten the mood. And it's kind of true for most of us, but the rest of us don't do the hugging. We just kind of make little sarcastic quips or punchlines or say little one-liners. And I love that the fact that she has Down syndrome hasn't disabled that in her. Like she's picked up our kind of traits over the years and can do that as well. So like I can think of two quick examples. One would be after my father died, we were coming out of church and she said to the priest, thanks for helping my dad, but it didn't work. And I think she meant prayers. And the second one was we were at this meeting once and she said my mother was fighting with the behaviorists and she said to everyone at the table, I am the judge and I object to everything. And I don't even know what that meant, but it just made everyone laugh and we all kind of moved on from there then. In 2007, she went to the Special Olympics and came back and told us that after years of being at these colleges and doing sports, she had actually earned her medical degree. And from then on, we were to call her Dr. Irma King. So I tried to narrow down her specialty, but she just would say, like, I practice all kinds of medicine. I couldn't narrow it down. And even though it's a cliche for people with Down syndrome that they're always sort of happy and stuff, there is some truth to that. And it is sort of like she has this ability to heal with her infectious laugh and the fact that she is very uninhibited and she's kind of like a little ambassador. And she can even transform me sometimes when she's like that. So I just wanted to tell like one quick thing. So we're on a shuttle bus once going from the parking area to the airport and she's sitting there and I'm in the worst mood ever. Like I'm so miserable because it's 5:30 in the morning. I don't talk really till about 9 and it's dark and I'm just exhausted and my mother's there too. And so she's already given up on me, my sister. So now she has a whole crowd of people on the shuttle that she can, connect with. So she starts just saying funny things and she's calling all the men handsome devils. And my mother and her are fighting over having Chinese food for lunch and going back and forth. And my mother keeps shooting it down and she's just telling everyone like her underpits are sweating. And this is what she does. And so, of course, everyone else on the shuttle at the time is miserable, like I am. But by the end, everyone's smiling and they're laughing and engaged in this show that my mother and sister often do. And of course, I'm not because I still have 6 more days of this to endure. And we're also sharing a room. So I was trying to pace myself. But otherwise, that's her sort of laughter is the best medicine gift. Thanks.
Thank you, Diane, for sharing that story. And I thank your sister, Dr. Irma King, as well. And recommend the book to get the book to learn more stories. Thank you. Take care in Connecticut.
Thank you, Cheryl.
And next I have Roger Kabler coming from Florida. Hello,
Hi.
Roger.
Hi, Cheryl. Hey, everybody.
There you are. Good
It's
to
a
see
blast.
you.
Thank you for having. I don't know why I'm yelling. I'm in Florida. I'm practicing. Cranky
So
old
far.
diary.
Yes,
See ya.
well, good to see you. I knew you in Hopkinton when
Oh,
we did
yes.
an interview together, which was one of the funniest and deep diving interviews,
Yeah.
both at once.
Remember we
So-
put the jester hat on you? Remember
I
that?
remember, yeah, that was one of the best moments, Roger, and I thank you for that. And I also want to say, when I did that interview, you didn't mention this in your bio, but your room was full of art. You're
yeah.
a painter as well as a
Yeah.
comedian.
This is one of the local cats from Hopkinton.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, thank you
Yeah.
for sharing it. So you're
Yeah.
still painting?
I am intermittently painting and editing this movie that's been going on for like 5 years now. It's almost done though. I think by the end of the summer we'll have it, and it's quite a project. And It's my opus. If I had gone to college, I suppose that it would be my thesis. But since I didn't go to college, it's just an opus. I hope it's an opus.
Pretty exciting opus. You interrupted your bio. I'll just tell folks also that Roger was a regular on the revival of the Carol Burnett Show in 1991, seen on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno, and now the movie about Robin Williams,
Right.
about a man who thinks he's possessed by Robin Williams. So what else do you want to tell to help folks know about this movie? Get ready for it.
Well, I've grown this beard, you see, to do a little older Robin thing. And we're coming down the home stretch. The movie is based on my story about what happened after Robin Williams passed. And I felt compelled to somehow give him a new life, some new life. I missed him so much. And I felt he was such a part of like a brother or a best friend or a soulmate. And I just thought, well, I don't know. I just felt like haunted by him. Like he kept saying, let's go back to work. Come on. And because I've always done an impression of him since I've seen him on Mork and Mindy. And I just fell into this incredible situation where I go around the country doing Robin Williams for an hour, and I do some of my other characters too, but that's what I do.
Yeah. And you're very convincing. I know I've been a part of that, and incredibly funny and confusing, because it feels like Robin is there and then it's Roger again. And how do people find out about the movie? What's next?
Well, I think I just got to send it around to some film festivals and get some sort of people watching it. And then 100 people donated to make the movie happen. So the 100 people, I want to give them a copy of the film and say, here it is. I thank you for the money. Here's your movie. and at least I can promise them that. And then if it goes somewhere from there, it's a beautiful story. It actually is very spiritual and lovely. And it's a mystery as to whether or not this individual, myself, was actually having a spiritual experience, possession, or whatever taken with the spirit, or he's just crazy. You know, he's just delusional, like the guy that goes up and says, hi, I'm Jesus Christ. Oh, yeah, come on this way. Or it's a hoax, like this guy's trying to pull it off. So whatever it is, you know, these events happened, and that's what we're going to leave people talking about, this possibility of this afterlife. But anyway, I'm not going to blather anymore.
Well, it's powerful. It's powerful. I know from the interview and what I heard from it. So keep going. You have a Facebook with your name? Or?
Yeah, it's my name, Facebook. I'm always putting up news about Robin,
Okay.
pictures of cats and dogs and stuff like that. You know?
All right. So
It's a
we'll look
variety.
for you and Robin there. So thank you for doing this story also tonight.
I got to be honest with you. I don't remember what story I told. It was like weeks and weeks ago. So whatever it is, enjoy. I don't know. It's true. though.
All right. Thank you, Roger.
Thanks. Hi, my name is Roger Kabler, and I have very few communication skills right now, so I'm hiding behind a dog. I feel like Mr. Rogers. Can we start over? Here's my puppy. He doesn't even know what he's doing. He's being used for nefarious purposes. Okay, all right. He doesn't even want to be here right now. Laughter is best medicine. Thanks for asking me to do this, and I'm glad to do this because I come from a very self-depreciating family, meaning we see ourselves in a certain light. There wasn't an abundance of dignity. Oh, therapeutic issues. We're getting into this right away. There isn't, you know, and I learned how to fend off bullies by learning how to laugh at myself. And that became a very effective tool to avoid getting punched in the face. So they would just laugh at me and then leave me alone. And it all the way up to like 1992, I was on the Tonight Show, and it's terrifying. You're up there with Jay Leno, and I had just become a dad, and I thought, how cool would it be? Now I'm there to promote my sitcom, Rhythm and Blues, which needed promoting, and I wanted to start as I just became a dad, so I brought this little snapshot of the newborn baby onto the show, and Jay's like, no, let's zoom in on you. Let's see the baby. But on the same show was Garth Brooks, and he had a giant poster of his newborn baby. He had just had a newborn baby too. So when this came about, I realized that I just have this little tiny, snapshot of my child, and Garth Brooks is this giant poster of his child. I didn't know he was going to bring his kid. I would have done something else. So all I could do was I just looked at it, and I fell into this kind of Gilbert Gottfried, like, well, I guess the Garth Brooks baby is more important baby, and I have a lesser baby. And, I did that to soothe myself, because it's, what are you going to, what are you going to do? Millions of people are watching you, and it was a little humiliating. So it wasn't like, it wasn't that painful, but you're on the Tonight Show, you have to do something funny. So, and the other thing I told, this is really pathetic. I have a history. I have a whole volume of pathetic events in my life, which I think are kind of funny. I want to start by saying I was opening for Cher. I was the opening act for Cher. I think it was like 1990 or something like that. And it was in Ottawa, Canada, at a county fair. At that point, Cher was doing the county fair circuit. So I guess neither of us were doing great, but I was opening for Cher. And I took a plane there, and unfortunately the next connecting plane was canceled. So I'm spun out, and I don't know where I am. And I get to the thing, and there's 8,000 people at a stadium. And I'm like, I've only been doing comedy for 2 years at this point. I'm like, I have never been in front of 8,000 people. So I thought, let's just all relax. And since it's a stadium, it's like a sporting event, I'll start with the national anthem, right? Get everybody like feeling good. So I just go, hey, come on, everybody, get up. Where's your patriotism? And nobody stood up. And somebody even rushed the stage and was furious at me. And I don't know what happened. And so I told this story on the Tonight Show, because the crux of the story is it was 2 weeks after I opened for Cher when I realized I was in Canada. You got to remember what country you're in when you do your national anthem. It helps. That's me laughing at how stupid I could be. But I was just so spun out. And, we have to laugh. We have to forgive ourselves for our craziness. But yeah, it's good to celebrate it too. And speaking of celebrating, I feel like I had dropped out of show business as of like 2003, and I wasn't ever going to go back again because of this kind of pain and stupidity. It was just, I have thin skin. I'm not really built for show business. It's a lot of toxicity, and there's a lot of rejection, and God forbid you should succeed. Your head gets like a pumpkin, and it's like, get this thing off of me. It's sick, because you think you're better than everybody else for a while. And it's just sick. It's hard to stay stable. So I started painting, and painting was really much better for me. And then it came to pass that Robin Williams was in the news. He passed away, and it affected me, and because I had used to do an impression of Robin Williams, and all of a sudden people were calling me saying, "Are you going to do a tribute?" And I was like, "No, I'm not a show business, never again." And the next thing I found is being very haunted by him, and he was getting into my everyday life, like the paintbrushes, and oh, my girlfriend, yeah. And I was like, "Oh my God, this guy's like on my case." So I started doing a tribute, and I realized the value of it was in some way, in some spiritual way, to bring him back. And maybe he wanted to go back to work. He's a spirit who was just like, I need to go to work. I need to create laughter, And so I did. I mean, I just started doing this tribute to him. It's been going for 5 years. And the people find it very healing. A lot of people kind of embraced me afterwards and said, I felt Robin. And the thing about Robin is his humor is very self-depreciating too. So he's a lot of humility, and I identify with that. So I was able to connect with the audiences in that way. And there's a lot of what Robin would do is what I try to recreate, was just to open them up with sort of silliness, gut humor, and sort of stuff that didn't have a lot of meat on the bones. And then towards the end of the show, it gets touching, and I sort of reach in the way he did and just take them by the heart, and it becomes a very healing thing. And so through the laughter and the identification and realizing, you know, when the truth is in the air, and this is the same as crying, when the truth is in the air and we relate to it, we tend to laugh or we tend to cry. And for me, being at a theater with 300 people and reliving what it's like to be with Robin Williams in the room was a communal experience of healing, you know, of laughter and understanding human experience through stories, and we come out of there feeling better. And to me, that is a gift. And it's also, I like to consider that I want to be part of a healing process, which we all need, just from caveman times.
Thank you, Roger, for the succession of stories about healing and laughter, and including Robin Williams. I'll never forget the story you told me about standing on the corner of the street in Hopkinton. I think it was part of our interview, and waving out at the cars, people you don't know, passing by probably during rush hour, and yelling, "Hello, I love you," to all these cars going by at the top of your lungs. I can just picture it. I didn't see it. And I don't know if it was you or Robin Williams, but I am sure it must have brought a lot of smiles to the people driving, passing by, just like your stories do. So keep going on being you and sharing your humor and your stories, and Robin's too. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so we have 3 more stories. So it looks like we'll be running a little bit later tonight. And we have, I am excited, coming in from Making Music Out in Community, Jagannath Khalsa, who's coming in from Millis. I think he was on the road at a concert performing violin. And that's how I first got to know him, both in sharing jokes and violin, coming in to Wake Up and Smell the Poetry at HCAM Studio, and sharing maybe a joke and a story that are funny, and also beautiful violin, which is what he does. And are you there, Jagannath?
I am. Can you hear me?
Oh, I hear you and see you. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes. Well, thank you for being here and sharing your story, and for folks to know about you, that Jagannath works by day in technology and is a musical and word artist in every other waking hour. That's quite ambitious and impressive. Jagannath plays violin with Claflin Hill Symphony Orchestra, and he tells a joke a day and shares stories to everyone whenever something pops in his mind. And he writes also a periodic column called From the Heart, with music, jokes, and observations, looking on the bright side. And I'll have to say, I received that on my email and felt it really came in handy during the last year of the pandemic and quarantine, to see those coming regularly. So I thank you. And Jagannath lives with his wife and daughter in Millis, and is a member of the Guru Ram Das Ashram Sikh community. And so I thank you for bringing your story, your jokes. And I want to say you're a gifted violinist, I know that, and a musician. And so why do you go the extra mile, that you seem driven to put jokes in the world and get people to laugh?
I think my father did it. And like Victor Borges, somebody quoted Victor Borges saying it's the shortest distance between people. I really did find that so. I would come back every day to my office, and I would always have I made it a goal to have a joke for her every day to greet her with. And it became habitual. And then when we were sent home, the office closed and we were all working from home. It was my equivalent of being around the water cooler and sharing a little bit of fun with somebody. And that's when I started writing my column to the world, just a bunch of email recipients, just 100 of them. And that's been 7 years already. I'm up to issue 1162, I believe, or 1161 today.
Wow.
And I've taken up a little game since the COVID. I wanted to share a little bit of Bach. And so today is June 11th. So I look up his BWV catalog number, BWV 611. And whatever it is that I find a YouTube clip. Maybe I have a story about it, but not usually. And just share that. It might only be 2 minutes of music, but it's a little bit of an anchor. And then followed by an outlandish joke of some kind.
So that's coming in the email today?
Yes. In fact, maybe you have it now. I don't recall if I push the send button.
Well, thank you in advance. And I know I've been chuckling and appreciating the bright side that you send. And who knows, maybe it will turn into some other project for you.
Thank you.
And briefly, maybe in a couple of seconds more, this story is about your time being in partnership with a puppeteer.
Yes, that's right. My friend Ron Asher in St. Louis 30 years ago.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, let's take a listen and see what happens in your story.
Thank you.
Involving laughter and good medicine, as you do make in this world in different ways. So thank you, Jagannath.
Hello, my name is Jagannath Khalsa, and this is my friend, Dr. Johan, the goose. He's been on the shelf for 15 years. Way back when I used to do comedy, I played violin, classical music, and I had Dr. Johan, and we would do corny jokes and classical music together. And if we really want to be risque, he would even go topless. There you have him. At any rate, my wife gave me this goose from the Prairie Home Companion catalog store years ago, and we dubbed him Dr. Johan, and we had a lot of fun. Eventually, I met a puppeteer in St. Louis, and we started doing programs for nursing homes and libraries and friends, all kinds of corny jokes. I would play snippets of violin music like Fiddle Around the Roof or the Blue Danube Waltz. And his character, Leonard, was huge arm puppets like Cookie Monster. And Ron would work behind a screen, a velvet curtain. He couldn't see what was going on down below, down above. His wife was down below giving him props like a red baseball bat made of plastic, and he would bop Dr. Johan, or he would try to grab my violin bow as I was playing. And that was Leonard, and he would spout funny stuff, corny jokes, or like fractured tales, like Mary had a little lamb. She tied it to a heater, and every time it turns around, it burned its little seater. And that kind of got big laugh. Well, I was working somewhere where my colleague, John, had a terrible accident. He fell off of a roof during home repair, and he had a severe head injury and went into a hospital. And after about 3 weeks, I really wanted to do something for John. And so I thought, we'll bring Ron, the goose, and do a show for them and him and his ward. So we packed up everything and we went over to the hospital. And they didn't know who I was, but I said, I had arranged this before in there. She called and she said, okay, go up to the 7th floor. So we went up there and somebody greeted us and brought us into a big room. Oh, she said, by the way, your friend has been discharged yesterday or day before, but that was not going to stop the show. So we went up there, we set up, and it was a dim room. There was only about 4 or 5 people. They were all rather grim looking, but we did our best show. And the thing about it was that nobody laughed. They were all very serious. And I think the only rise they got was when Leonard, the puppet, bopped Johan with the baseball bat. And besides that, it was just quiet. And Ron is dying down there, wondering what's going on. And after we finished and we're packing up, a nurse came and said, Oh, there you are. We were expecting you on the other side of the ward. Oh, it's too late now. They've all gone to sleep. You'll have to reschedule. So I called the next day and told them what was happening. And they said, oh, somebody misdirected you. They accidentally sent you to the psychiatric, clinically depressed people's ward. So sorry, we'll reschedule. So the show did go on. What do you think of that memory, Joanne? I knew we were funny. Call my agent. Johan, I am your agent. We are back.
Thank you, Jagannath and Johan. That's our first puppet who has joined in storytelling on this program. And may it continue, perhaps. Thank you for all the laughter that you bring, as well as beautiful music. So people can hear you as people are getting back together at Claflin Hill, I imagine.
Yes.
All right. Well, carry on. And thank you so much for this evening.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Now I'm calling Mary Green. Mary Star Green, are you in the house,
Hi,
Mary?
Cheryl. I am in the house. Can you?
All right. Good to
I
see
am.
you. There you are. And for people to know about Mary is that she lived in Hopkinton over 20 years, where she taught yoga in the top floor of her home, which I was a participant and thought was amazing yoga, and moved to Milford in the midst of the pandemic. As for home, Mary has always felt most at home imagining, making things, or moving around in the great outdoors. And as I recall, hiking most of the mountains, the White Mountain Range.
Yeah, numerous times. Yeah, love the White Mountains.
Is that, was it 50? Something to do with 50?
46 peaks that are higher than 4,000 feet. Maybe some people out there know of them.
Yeah, well, I find that very impressive because, I think of going to the hill, up my driveway is an accomplishment. I'm more of a slower mover, and so hiking, I know, is something you love. And also Mary counts making art, collage, ceramics, hiking, gardening, and ocean swimming her greatest pleasures. And she has navigated the world of science and health through her career, first as a biomedical engineer, and in recent years as a yoga mindfulness instructor. Shared movement and wellness tools with people of ages 5 to 90 plus. So good to hear from you, and that you have a story for us. And, Mary, I tried to get a doctor on this program, but those I sought were too busy. So you're our designated health expert, I declare. You teach serious health and well-being practices of yoga and meditation. And I know you've taught mindfulness for Harvard, and these are serious topics, and you are very good. And I wonder if you, for a minute, you can say why you think humor is important.
Whoa, why I think humor is important. I think we've all spoken to it in a variety of ways. I think there's a connection. I think there, in times where we can be really tense, and in a lot of things, it can be a thing that will diffuse, for a moment. It can bring some ease. We know, right? Yeah, we know.
Just curious from your health perspective there. But I'll also ask you about hand gestures, because I know that that's part of your story, and I won't give it away. But I know that in yoga, you teach hand mudra motions sometimes, which I think is interesting, that hands come through for you. And I wonder if you can maybe say why they are helpful to learn, and show us one, like in 50 seconds or less.
In 50 seconds. Okay, well, hands are really expressive just in general, you know, and again, maybe many of you probably are familiar with mudras, and I know we're familiar with using hand gestures. But I use them because it's just, there is a circuitry within, you know, our system without, I don't have a lot of time to talk about this, but it has benefits for our body and mind. I'll just leave it at that.
That's
Right.
great.
And
Yeah.
and we know we have, this can mean we don't have to, I mean, you know, it can be this. You'll see within the story that I'm telling that there are gestures. Can I just say something about that story?
Yes. Yes, please.
Okay, so here's my invitation to everybody. When you're hearing my story and I'm telling these jokes, please see them in the context of the story itself. So, not so much about the jokes, but really what's happening behind the joke. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. I think you tell a wonderful story. So thank you, Mary. Let's take a look.
Thank you. If there's one enduring lesson that I've learned from the family that I married into, it's this. Nothing holds the power to deepen connection, to break the tension, to make friends out of strangers more than sharing a really good, well-worn joke. So let me tell you, the family that I grew up in, yes, we really valued humor and wit and nurtured it in a variety of ways, but telling jokes, it just wasn't a thing for me. In the Green family, oh, it was a thing. And there were jokes about everything. And there were some jokes that seemed to be passed down through the generations, almost like you were passing down that ancestral DNA. You know, and in telling these jokes, which were embellished in a variety of ways, it was almost like you were showing your school colors, you know, just wearing the uniform. There on the bookshelf of their Brookline home, they had on prominent display in the bookshelf this big, thick book called The Giant Book of Jewish Humor. And so there it was. And there were a few jokes that were so well known that you didn't even have to tell the joke. You just shared the punchline, and that was enough for those in the know. And one in particular joke was a very sweet one that was really more from my father-in-law to my mother-in-law, from Arnold to Edith. And it went like this, just with the punchline. It was a gesture that he gave, and she would respond with the punchline, arthritis, which would send them into laughter like school kids. But here's the story. Last week, my husband Bob and I met with his parents at a retirement community for a tour of the whole facility, a tour of this apartment that had opened up. And so there we were in Canton, and all the events leading up to why we were visiting, that's a whole other story. But there we were. And who was at the front door but David? He was there. He was our senior sales consultant, a really tall, lanky, younger man, dark hair, very, very friendly. He proceeds to take us on the tour, which goes really well. We come back after the tour. We're meeting in his office there, and we get some pamphlets out and some figures together and things like that. I'm waiting for that, and there's a pause, and I don't know if he's going to be responding to a question that had been asked earlier, or if maybe he was just sizing up Edie and Arnie, potentially new residents, and knowing he was going to go in for his best closing pitch. But he says this: speaking of memory loss, a resident here told me a really funny joke. Can I share it? Well, yes, of course. So he proceeds to tell the joke, which I'm going to tell you, and I have to get up. David's very tall, but it has some body language here, so you have to see a little bit more of my body. And the joke is, a woman is at the grocery store walking down the aisle. There at the very end of the other aisle, walking towards her without a cart, is an elderly gentleman. And he's stopping walking every once in a while and doing this. Right down here. He's doing this just a few times. They're getting closer. And when they get very close, she says, "Pardon me, excuse me, is everything okay? Can I help you?" And he goes, no, no, my wife sent me here to pick up a few grocery items, and so I wouldn't forget to pick up a head of lettuce, chicken breast, navel oranges, and Fantastic. To which point, Edith, my mother-in-law, almost falls off the chair with laughter. And she starts to hit my father-in-law, Arnie, tell him our joke, tell him our joke. And so my dear sweet father-in-law says, well, David, have you heard about the young man, about your age? The young Jewish man goes to visit his mother, like a good boy, and like the good mother, she's prepared him a big meal, and he settles in and starts to feast, and as his mouth is full and he's eating, his mother is peppering him with all these questions. Why aren't you married? Are you meeting anybody? What are you even looking for in a woman? Can't speak, his mouth is full, so he's gesturing this, this, and this. She's like, what? Again, this, and this. She goes, son, I understand. Brains, for sure. Okay, money. But arthritis? To which point, David starts laughing. They're all laughing. I think he might even be taking notes to share with other people. And as I witness this, I'm feeling everything's going to be okay. This already feels a little bit like family and home. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. You are an excellent joke teller of someone else's jokes. And
I'll just say maybe jokes
yes.
from a different era, really, but
yes, I think
Thank
we
you,
realize
everybody.
that. Yeah, as does David does, perhaps, in his attempt to connect through the common language of jokes from back in time, right? Thank you very much for your contribution of story, and have good days where you are with yoga and hiking and more. Thank you, Mary. And last we have on our lineup, Anna Gamel. Hi, Anna.
Hello.
There you are, patient one at the end. Good to see you. And you're coming from Hopkinton.
I'm coming from Greece, but I live in
You're,
Happening.
well, that's right. You're coming from Greece. That's where you lived until you were in your teens. And so since you opened that up, I'll introduce folks and tell them a little about you. Anna is the founder and owner of Body and Beyond in Hopkinton, and where her practice involves working with clients with chronic pain and injuries, as well as athletes during events for preparation and recovery. And speaking of athletes, Anna was in 1989 the third national champion of her native Greece in the 10K meter run, and also co-director in her later practice of Athens 2004 Olympic Games sports massage team, and also on the massage therapy team in 2012 Olympics, because Olympics are coming up, so this is relevant. And that's when you were in London, and also you have worked as a therapist for elite athletes competing in our own Boston Marathon. And Anna does some amazing work. I added that in because I'm familiar with her work, and offers a number of other types of healing and well-being, health-related practices you can find on her website, Body and Beyond, right?
Yep.
Okay. And Anna is also a teacher and instructor of massage therapy and a visiting faculty member in Utah at the Myotherapy College. And you also go and teach outside of the country. And you were in Greece, now you're here, and your story kind of covers being in both places a little bit, right?
Yes, a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Well, hi, everybody. So great to be here. I think Cheryl has taken me out of my shell of being able to say a story. I never thought that I was a storyteller until I met Cheryl. and I love to share stories. So yes, I come from Greece. I came here 30 years ago, long time ago. And being in America and being here has been an amazing journey. But what is amazing is about the language, right? Because every time I will meet somebody, will say, "Oh, do I detect some accent?" And I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about. I can't hear an accent." So it's like, okay. So laughter has been part of my life from as long as I remember, and I'm grateful and thankful for teaching me to laugh to my father. My father taught me that lighthearted and laughter is what will get you through in the most difficult and darkness places in your life. So from above, he's watching, and I continue his legacy, I guess, because laughter is what makes our hearts singing, right?
Right. Yeah. And I know I've seen that, you even laughing in your practice sometimes. And even when I did an interview with you, giving me advice through massage, that was pretty serious, but you did it in a gentle, easygoing way with a little bit of laughter then. So I know that I thought of you when I thought of this topic.
Yes.
So
Yes.
let's take a look at your story. You ready?
Thank you.
Storyteller Anna Gamel.
Oh, hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. Laughter and humor in our lives. Oh, what can I say? I grew up with that. My dad was always laughing. And actually, I don't remember a time that he didn't smile, even in difficult times. So laughter has been very important part of my life. And I feel even in relationships, when relationships like lacking laughter and humor, laughing with yourself and laughing with others, it's getting stagnation. So it's time to go. But one story that I would like to share with all of you is about the time that I came to this country. So I come from Greece. I came to this country 30 years ago, and I didn't know the language, and I didn't know the culture, and everything was like very new to me. And of course, my English was not good. Although some people say, "Oh, I hear an accent." I don't hear accent anymore after 30 years. In my head, I hear no accent. And I'm like, accent? Really? You hear an accent? Because I don't hear it. If I don't hear, how you hear it? But that's another story. So I really wanted to be part of the community. So what did I do? I volunteer in a preschool, YMCA, Grindle YMCA in Worcester, the first place that literally I came out of the boat, that they say, and I arrived in America, and I wanted something to get out of the house, and I love children. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go and volunteer. So talking about being humbled and talking about your ego and your persona in the world, it goes completely off when you're with children. They don't care who you are, what you are. They just saying exactly what they feel and what they believe. So I had a problem with one particular word, actually few words, but I will say the one that I think it's like to this day, after 30 years, sometimes I have to think what I want to say. So I always was confusing between kitchen and chicken. So how that is possible, I don't know. But literally, at times I will say, oh, let's go to the, I wanted to say, let's go to the kitchen. I would say, okay, let's go to the chicken. And and people were looking at me and I would be like, what is he saying? And I'm like, well, let's go to the chicken, the chicken. And they were like, chicken, Anna, chicken. So that was actually what's happening with the children. So one day, one little boy, I loved him. I was reading a book for them as much as I could, because I found it that by reading the books, it was helpful for me to learn English. And of course, I had these amazing little kids around me that they had no filters, that they would be like, you talk funny. Or they will say, I don't understand you. But just with the disgust, like completely, like, what's wrong with you, woman? Like, why you can't speak the way we're speaking? So I will start laughing, and then they will start laughing, and then I will make jokes about the words and different words, and I will ask them to teach me. I said, okay, if I speak funny, why don't you tell me how to say it? Therefore, I will know. So there was one story about the kitchen and the chicken, believe it or not, which, okay, that completely, they lost me there. Every time I will try, and I'm a dyslexic on top of that. So Greek, dyslexic, not knowing English, and I have a little 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds to correct me. Okay, your ego can settle right there. And you're becoming very humble, very, very humble. And so this darn book, it was all about a chicken that wanted to not go to the kitchen. Okay, you see what happened there? I already, like, I had to think about what I'm trying to say. So the chicken that didn't want to end up in the kitchen. And that story, it took me so long to read it because I was keep reading it again and again. The kids start laughing, I start laughing. And what I want to say is that I think we're taking life so serious, and we're so harsh on ourselves. We're so, like, we want to be proper and perfect and this and persona, the mask and the parts and this and that, and look at me. But truly laughing through that time of my life, that it was so difficult. I have left my family, I left my country, my best friends. It was a part of, like, remind me to not take myself serious about it, and to really, really be with the children and just enjoy the time. So I guess I will wish and hope for all of us, and for whoever listens this, to bring that humor in their life, bring it the humor, the love, the compassion, and humble, actually, because these kids really humbled me, and but brought such a joy. Laughter is for everybody. It's free, and you actually can find it, the humor, anywhere. And if we cannot find the humor with ourselves, to laugh with ourselves, then it's really hard to be able to actually understand the humor of other. And that's where misunderstandings happen. So really enjoy laughter. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. That's great advice to end with. And you keep on telling your stories and laughing as you're telling them too. And people can learn about you at Body and Beyond. We are at 2 hours again with a lineup of really amazing, inspiring, funny, hard stories of life. So I thank all the storytellers tonight who said yes. And it's not easy to recruit for these stories. And all these people said yes, and they gave stories without direction from me. And they're wonderful. I thank all the people who are participants tonight. I thank HCAM TV and Mike, who's been hosting. I thank all of you who are viewing and all of those who will view on YouTube later. And that's it. There's one last program that happens right after this next Friday, and that's done for the series. And so I'll be sending information around. We'll give that information on HCAM TV. The theme of that last program is I get by with a little help from my friends, which is a good way to end it. And I want to say that. And thank you for all my friends who joined tonight and for all of you who are watching.
Thank
Good night,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cheryl. Thank you.
you. All right, so we did it. Thank you. There we are, everyone. Gosh, I just can't make it shorter so far.